So I think by now most of you have probably seen this video. And I don't have like a direct YouTube link or anything, but this is from a parody account called Tidiana McGrath, who tweeted, "Utterly appalled at the continual misgendering of this beautiful and gracious woman. They have completely denied her existence by talking to her in this way." Now, I'm not here to support the tweet, I just wanted the video, so I don't agree with mocking this trans individual, and I genuinely hope that people will just try to be more respectful. Look, I get it, it's one thing to post mean comments on the internet, but come on, like, we have mutual respect for people. But this is an important conversation that needs to be had, because there's some shocking things that the left needs to be criticized for, and, you know, we'll criticize those who are mean. But I'm gonna play through this video, and I'm gonna point some things out, and we're gonna have a conversation about what's going on with this viral video, so.
Excuse me, it's ma'am. It is ma'am.
If you'd like me to, you need to settle down.
You need to settle down and mind your business, okay?
Ma'am, once again, ma'am.
I said both of you.
No, you said sir. Once again, it's ma'am.
I actually said both of you guys. It was general.
Right beforehand, you fucking said sir.
Sir? Okay.
Motherfucker, take it outside. If you want to call me sir again, I will show you a fucking sir.
I apologize.
Motherfucker.
I apologize now.
I need your corporate number. Because I'm going to call them and talk about how it's misgendered several times in this store.
I apologize for that.
I need your corporate number now. Get it for me now.
So there's a few things that I need to talk about. First, what this trans woman did, in my opinion, is completely inappropriate. I can certainly empathize with the frustration of, you know, look, before this happened, they're clearly upset that something has gone wrong with a return, so they're already angry. And then you add on, you know, the clerk saying, sir, they're going to get really mad about things. But it is absolutely inappropriate and needs to be criticized that this person then went on to kick over start swearing, yelling, knocking things over,
screaming. I will show you a fucking sir.
But here's the important point.
Motherfucker.
I apologize now.
Take it outside. If you want to call me, said sir.
Sir? Okay.
Right there, the clerk said, sir, again. There's a woman off to the side who said, sir. So another thing I want to point out before I mention this is when the trans woman mentions being misgendered.
I'm going to call them and talk about how it's misgendered several times in this store.
I apologize for that.
I need your corporate number now. Get it for me now.
I'm going to ask you to calm down and stop cussing.
Give me your corporate number. Well, I'm going to ask you for the 5th time to stop calling me a man, because quite clearly I am not.
And I apologize. I'm sorry for that.
Right there, this person said quite clearly, I am not. And I think we have to have an honest conversation about this. The culture war is extremely esoteric. The average person doesn't understand what's going on. People have said that the clerk the guy behind the counter said sir to be overly disrespectful or just didn't care and denied the existence and all that stuff. And I don't believe that's true. I think the clerk is just a normie. Someone who doesn't go online and watch all these, videos and articles about the trans community and doesn't understand. Look, I'm not trying to be a mean person. I believe all individuals are deserving of respect. And I think this tweet is actually, I disagree with it. I think it's the wrong thing to do, to disparage somebody. By all means, I have no problem criticizing anybody for swearing, cussing, knocking things over, and yelling in a store. That's wrong, okay? Definite overreaction. But I also just absolutely need to say, the trans woman says, don't call me a man when I'm clearly not. But that's not fair. That is not fair at all. Look, I understand the issue of the trans community. Like, I have friends who are trans. I would understand this. I am online all day reading this stuff. But you have to recognize the trans community is something like a fraction of a percent. So these people in this store, who probably spend all of their time watching football, The Simpsons and Family Guy, who aren't in the culture war, see someone who, look, comes in, and this is a biological male, okay? And I also want to point out that the individual is just wearing a hoodie and jeans. There's nothing that says woman, for the most part. The other thing I want to point out too as well, the trans woman, I don't know their name, I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but repeatedly said, it's ma'am, it's ma'am. You can't necessarily understand what any of these people would be thinking or what that means. If there was someone this person clearly looks to be maybe 6 feet tall, very masculine, grunts when knocking over a stand, yells, and has a deep voice, by any regular person's understanding, this is a biological male, which they would call a man. So the clerk then is put in this position, confused, having no idea what's going on. And I believe when the clerk said, "Sir," it's just a reaction. Okay, there are social norms that affect 99.4% of society, and that the trans community, and again, not to be disrespectful, but they're not in the majority, and most people don't know this. So there's another Twitter thread from, I believe it's from a trans woman, Anna, a space doctor PhD, who explained what happened here, and I think it'd be fair to read through this and try and empathize, but also it is worthy of criticism. So I'll read through it. Anna says, "It's really hard for me to watch that video of the trans woman being misgendered at GameStop. Like, who hasn't wanted to unleash on someone repeatedly misgendering us? Most of the time, we stay quiet for our own safety. Anger is a more than justifiable response." Well, that's wrong, and it's not about safety. Look, a lot of people get angry in normal situations, and you don't scream and yell at them. People do. They shouldn't. In some places, it's actually illegal. This behavior I think in most places, kicking over the stand would warrant disorderly conduct and vandalism, right? So no, anger, look, actually I'll say this, anger is justified. You're allowed to be angry when someone disrespects you. But the behavior of this individual knocking things over and swearing and yelling in the store where there are children present is not justifiable. Anna says, "Cis people don't realize that a reaction like hers comes from repeatedly awful behavior by cis people. It's minority stress. She probably responded in anger and frustration from repeatedly facing people misgendering her. Eventually, one sir is one too many and you snap. And that is not the fault of the clerk or the woman who are in this video. They're not, look, if you want someone to understand, then you're going to be in a position where you're constantly correcting people. Most people don't know this. And there are people who do, who don't want to use words you tell them to use. That's another point that needs to be made. If the store clerk wants to say sir, well, that's the prerogative of the store clerk, right? You are never entitled to someone's respect, let alone their speech. Now, I personally believe you should. I believe you should, speak as someone prefers. In fact, I even think Ben Shapiro had a very reasonable approach to this. Ben said that in public, he would refer to a trans person by their preferred pronoun because it's easier and it's a tool, it's about a utility. But in, written context of understanding the world, he wouldn't. So I disagree with that. I wouldn't do that, but I think that's actually fairly reasonable. Just in my opinion, I disagree. But even Ben says, I would use this person's, pronouns because it would be confusing to try and explain to someone all these social norms. But in that, Ben also realizes that people like this, the store clerk, they don't know what's going on. And they're being sort of attacked because of it. Not fair, not cool. All right, I feel for like my trans friends and for other trans people, but unfortunately, this is the world and most people don't understand, and you're going to have to explain it to them. Anna says, "I remember one time a college student at the front desk for my GF's dorm grilled me about my driver's license. She told me that I had to update it because it didn't look like me. I was pissed off that day from reading a TERF article, so I fought with her, told her off. And all that's going to do is make things worse. It's going to make people think that you're unreasonable and they have no idea why you're mad. As a result, my GF lodged a complaint with the LGBT liaison, and student employees were told not to harass trans guests about their license. Sometimes anger gets us done, and making cis people realize they need to treat us with respect. In conclusion, F the GameStop employee, F the cis person offering to call the police, and F the person who filmed the incident. But why? Nobody understood what was happening. The trans person in that video says, I am clearly not a man, or says, stop calling me a man when I'm clearly not, and that's just not fair. It's not true. These people clearly have no idea what the trans community is about, what it means, how to be respectful. They just see someone who is biologically male, tall, with a deep voice, angrily yelling, knocking things over, and I think the GameStop employee saying, sir, was doing it just because it's like instinctive. If a man comes up to me and says something, I'm going to just instantly be like, sir, please calm down. Because you don't think. You don't think in these situations. You don't know how to restructure your social norms and behaviors in the face of an intense situation like this. And simply yelling it's ma'am over and over again, I'd imagine they're like, I don't, what do you mean it's ma'am? Like, what does that mean, right? It's not clear. So they end by saying, P.S., this is one of those situations where I'm not going to post the video. This poor woman deserves privacy and respect, and both were violated because someone wanted internet points. It's easy to find if you want to see it. I don't want to contribute to the culture around it. I can agree with that, and I also want to end by criticizing the Titiana McGrath post. I typically find Titiana McGrath to be funny. I do. But I'm not a fan of comedy that's at the deliberate expense of somebody who's, you know, I don't know. But there's a fine line. Look, if you want to go up on stage and like George Carlin drops a bunch of racial slurs and actually uses them on people, but we understand what he's doing. In this instance, it's a real world situation where someone is being mocked and, you know, the situation is belittling to them. I just don't, look, I certainly think you're allowed to say it. I certainly think Tatiana McGrath should not be banned, and the account was restored, and a lot of the things that Tatiana posts is fine, but I am of the opinion to try and be respectful to avoid, like, we don't want the culture war to become a civil war, you know what I mean? We want to be respectful. We want to be respectful to a certain extent. And I'll say it's fair to say that this individual's tirade, knocking things over, is not worthy of respect. But when it comes to the issue of the trans community, it's people in general who are deserving of a certain level of respect. In this instance, everybody deserves respect, but you know, some things, they get out of hand, and I think you've got to criticize bad behavior when bad behavior happens. You know, yelling at a store, knocking things over, it's worthy of criticism. Anyway, I want to talk about it. Stick around. More videos to come, and I will see you in a few minutes.